All right, Chiefs fans, hope you guys are doing well. This is day 4. I know it's been a stretch, but cheers. Welcome back. I'm all in on the coffee today. It's been a long weekend. This is the critical part. They have a couple of opportunities, the Kansas City Chiefs do, to try and make sure that they get something done that can help them on the defensive side of the ball. I feel like they've probably got that zeroed in on. And we're going to find out exactly how they go about it here in a couple of minutes. We are currently 4 picks away from the Chiefs pick in the 4th round. I think it's going to be kind of fun. We're going to review real quick what's gone on so far to this point today. And a couple of players that we talked about yesterday have gone. First was Darnay Holmes, a small nickel corner out of UCLA. He has gone off the board, and that's okay. There's still options there. Coming down, Troy Pride, the Notre Dame cornerback that had such a great Senior Bowl, he has gone off the board as well. So that was another option that I had a little bit higher on my board, and I can show you guys where we're at with that in terms of the grades. I'm going to put that back up on the screen as long as I can share it correctly. Need the computer to kind of cooperate with me today. Hope you guys aren't having draft fatigue at this point. There we go. So at this point, Troy Pride has gone. Darnay Holmes has gone. Reggie Robinson went off the board as well, right about 10 picks after I thought he might. So right now what we're sitting at is Amik Robertson is still on the board. John Reed is still on the board. Couple of corner options. If the Chiefs just don't feel that they need corners, they might go safety. There's a couple of those guys still left. L'Jarius Sneed is still there. I believe Burgess is still on the board. Let's double check that. And it looks like we're good. There's Reggie's being selected. Andy Heck's son did go. He is going to be a Texan. I'm sorry, Charlie. Kevon Wallace did go. And James Lynch, who I told you about yesterday from Baylor, did go to the Minnesota Vikings. I think he's a guy that kind of fits what Mike Zimmer wants to do, to tell you the truth. As is Troy. Troy Dye is somebody that I think Mike Zimmer can take full advantage of. I'm not sure exactly how they'll deploy him, but I think that there's some options there. And then a tight end that I thought it was a sleeper just went off the board here at 133, and that's Colby Parkinson from Stanford. I think the Chiefs are pretty comfortable with where they are on the tight end. And here's Matt Derrick. I was just going over the tight end that Colby Parkinson was just selected. My condolences. Albert O ends up Denver. For all of you Mizzou fans and Matt, I'm sorry to see it.
Yeah, and the last place you want to see him go is Denver. Not only are you a Mizzou fan, now you got to watch Drew Lock and Albert O in Denver, but Denver's going to be really good. I mean,
yeah,
they're doing a lot of
the
right
speed
things.
That O brings. Now they got Fant and O, two really fast tight ends. And Drew, I think, honestly, this is a big plus for Drew Lock. I think it kind of sets him up for a bit more of a comfort zone. I know he's been transitioning in that offense. And when your head coach is not an offensive guru, I think it helps with the comfort level to have a former teammate. How were those two at Mizzou?
You know, they both had a tough time, Drew Lock's last year in Columbia because they had the coaching change. Derek Dooley came in. And that it never seemed like it was a really good fit with that offensive scheme. The changes really seemed to affect, I think, both those players. But go back to 2017 and Albert O as a freshman, him and Drew Lock, I think he had 11 touchdown catches that season, 400 plus yards as a true freshman. That's just ridiculous. I mean, you saw the talent there. I go back. I think that's the season to look at. I mean, yes, Albert O, based on what you saw production-wise the last 2 seasons, wasn't there. But I put so much of that on Derek Dooley's offense, what they did. They just didn't utilize him correctly. He had some injuries as well that kind of slowed him down. But when healthy, that kid is an athlete. He can play. So, no, you're right. I mean, with him and Fant, and then you put the speed guys now that the Denver's got on the outside too, that's going to be a dangerous combination.
I've been really impressed, I have to say, with John Elway's turnaround in that organization. I think Mike and Gruden have gotten on the track there. Dan, the whole West is coming for this team. Who are you most impressed with so far?
I think that, excuse me, the Broncos and the Chargers have done a pretty good job. We see the Chargers probably about a year away from truly competing. They have a really good defense and still a young quarterback that's going to be taking, I would imagine, a year off to learn from Tyrod Taylor. And the Broncos have Drew Lock as their established guy going forward. He's going to be in the second year, and they added a bunch of weapons. They already have a good, solid defense. And then I know that we see the Raiders, picking 3 wide receivers out of their, I think it was the first 81 picks in the draft. And then they came in with like one of the worst defenses according to DVOA last year. And then they just go all on offense. So I understand you got to keep up with the Chiefs, but you got to be able to score and then stop them too. So they're kind of confused me with that, but they had a bunch of speed. So I think all the offenses in the division have gotten better from this draft for sure.
Yeah, I think the 2 that scared me as a combo are Judy and Hamler in Denver. Matt, what stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you got a couple of guys on the outside that can stretch the field a lot of different ways, not just vertically, but horizontally as well. And I think Locke's the quarterback that can take advantage of that. I've also been impressed, with the last couple of drafts, with the guys they've gotten up front. They've with Cushenberry, this year's draft, Dalton Reisner last year. You got some guys that can block up front, so I think they've got at least the foundation to be able to protect Locke. It's the question is going to be with the AFC is that everybody seems to be going offense to try and keep up with the Chiefs. Are they going to have the defense? Are they going to have offenses that can score 38 points, but they're going to give up 51 every week? They might be getting to that point, but you know what? It's the modern NFL, and if you can't score, you can't do anything. So I don't know. We'll see what this is going to be a great test case.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if you are the Raiders, Chargers, or Broncos, the only way you're going to win a Super Bowl is you beat Kansas City. And it means whether you're going to beat them in the regular season or beat them in January, you figure out how to beat KC. The rest of it will take care of itself.
Well, I think it also kind of gives a way for just how good Andy Reid and Brett Veach are doing with understanding where their division rivals are trying to go. Normally, I would have said this should have been a defensive heavy to this point draft for the Chiefs, but they understand that they want to continue to reload and protect the offense because everybody's coming that direction. I think that makes a little more sense as we see this evolve and unfold. What they do here is going to be interesting. A lot of guys that we talked about last night as possibilities today are already off the board. Reggie Robinson, Darnay Holmes, Troy Pride. A lot of the corner talent is getting taken right here. Strangely enough, Bryce Hall is still there. We'll see what happens there. But interesting last night. Let's start with Matt. Veach was not very bashful. I think he said it twice that moving around today is not out of the question and could be something that they end up doing.
Yeah, they still don't have a lot of currency. If you're going to move around today, it's going to take some future draft picks to do it. So it can certainly be done. But I'll tell you what, one advantage I think that the Chiefs do have is, and I think they're going to like it come later today, is this might be the year where there's a benefit to not having a 7th round pick, and in the Chiefs' case, a 6th round pick, because the scramble to go get the priority free agents and the undrafted guys later this afternoon is going to be a mess. The process, because what you're doing is you're trying to coordinate all your scouts and your personnel guys to try and track down these guys, make the phone calls, get deals done. You're dealing with players who are disappointed that they didn't get drafted, and they're going to want to think about the offers and shop themselves around. And if you've got a position that you're trying to fill, you need to fill it then, and time is of the essence. So not having to pick for 2 rounds, after the Chiefs are done the 5th, I can't rule out that they would pop back in if there's somebody that they feel that they must have. But, they can start working on the undrafted guys immediately, and I think that's going to be to their advantage.
Yeah, and honestly, it comes with the evolution of a roster. The more guys you have at the top, for every one of them, you need 4 or 5 guys that are rock bottom in order to keep your 53 under the cap. And you can't have draft picks playing special teams at that point. You need those UDFAs to fill out your bottom 10 at least. Dan, are you concerned about how many of those guys right now are still the bottom 10, that is, being draft picks, being guys that aren't saving them enough money when it comes to the Jones thing coming and the Mahomes contract coming?
It's interesting. We talked about earlier in last couple of days that they brought all these guys back on these 1-year contracts, and I'm interested to see how it's going to go with Jones. I know that they want to get that contract signed, and it would, if they want to get that done this year, I think it helps because then you can make his number a little bit smaller and then go down the line a little bit with more of it. And then next year we have all these guys that are on 1-year contracts. They do fall off the books a bit. That we're not paying Eric Berry after this year, so there's going to be some money freed up. And Matt was talking about the UDFAs, and I think that's going to be something that really helps them. And in this draft, there was a lot of talk about how we're not going to be able to really see a lot of those Division II, Division III guys, and could really be, like Matt said, an advantage for them to be able to get some of that head start on seeing where these guys are gonna, who they're gonna want to bring in and get a line out there to talk to these guys before the draft ends. And I think that they'll do a good enough job of getting it filled out so that they have money to move around. That's not so much a worry for me, I think.
Yeah. I think the hey, we're the Super Bowl champs, come sign with us is a little bit easier too.
Yeah.
But Matt, today is kind of a shift, I think, in what's going on in the room, but in the Zoom, basically. This is Dave Tobe's day, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, guys that you're taking on Saturday, they're going to have to be special teams guys. So that's definitely a factor that you're looking at. Sometimes you even, are targeting guys who are maybe going to be exclusively, special teams guys immediately that maybe you're hoping can eventually develop into players. And, Armani Watts is, I think, a great example of that kind of player, somebody that the Chiefs drafted with the idea they could be a special teams player. And you're hoping that eventually they can, develop into a role on defense as well. So, yeah, that's going to be a priority. Anybody that you see them take today, it's going to be that way. Once you get closer to the 5th round, that's when you start also seeing teams taking chances on players that have a lot of question marks. And that's probably why you see Bryce Hall still available, because the medical questions are just, numerous with him and just where he's at. Hey, is near the end of the 4th round, 32nd pick in the 4th, is that a place where you can start saying, okay, we're going to take some guys with some question marks? Possibility. So I can't rule out that, maybe that's the time. I mean, I do expect that he's going to go off the board here in the next, maybe dozen picks for sure.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if he fell any farther than that, but I think the Chiefs are now on the clock. I do think this is going to be a defensive back. I'd be surprised if it's not.
And I noticed you tweeted out a one that I didn't think was the greatest fit, but Geno Stone you like, right?
I think the Chiefs might like him because, once again, I mean, he's an Iowa athlete. That's something that, the Chiefs do like. They like the way that the coaches are, prepare guys up there to come to the league, prepared to play. I think he's a guy that could probably play some special teams, at least immediately. And the Chiefs are open to going to safety, even though I think that they're better suited and have a bigger need for a corner. They're just looking for, I think at this point, guys in the defensive backfield and guys that can play special teams. And he might not be a perfect fit, but I think that he's got that edge that I think that the Chiefs are looking for.
I think that's a common thread. I agree with you. I think he plays with edge too. And Dan, I think that's kind of been the overriding theme through this whole draft is guys that bring something in terms of attitude.
Exactly. And, you got a winner in Clyde's Edwards-Helaire, a guy that plays with a bunch of fire and effort, and both really Niang and Willie Gay Jr. I got into a little bit of Niang's tape. Unfortunately, I only got like 25 minutes after my daughter decided to wake up screaming from her nap. But he does play with quite a bit of effort and energy, and I like that. So I think that's got a lot to do with the way they want this team going forward. We talked at length, about Matthew and Clark and adding that type of leadership and cocky attitude, really, when it comes down to it. And they did it in the playoffs last year. Apologize for the dog screaming there, but so this is really comes down to just bringing that mentality, and all the players they want to just kind of have that exact same the feel to it. And I think that's going to be. That's why I kind of see an Emmerich Robertson type player, maybe just because of his. I think that he's got that dog mentality for his, his size. So that's something I'm looking at as well.
Yeah, and it looks like the pick is in. We should see it here momentarily, but I think both of you bring up good points that those guys fit the style, the type of guy that they're looking to add. And, a lot is to be said for that. If you bring that kind of edge, especially for a DB, you want somebody that's got a chip on his shoulder. I think, especially knowing that you're not spending a top 100 pick on them, they got to have something backing them up, something to push them through. I thought it was interesting that somebody mentioned last night that Willie Gay's got kind of a chip as well. I think that all goes into motivation towards what is a tough offseason and a shortened cycle for all of these rookies. I think that's something that can drive them towards making this roster and actually being able to contribute at some point. And it looks like we have the pick coming here. I have to say, I enjoy seeing the fans get in there. I thought he was actually going to announce it here, but here we go.
Oh, well, safety.
We talked about Sneed yesterday. A safety, yes, he did play that last year, but he played a lot of corner previously. So he's got a nice mix. Again, a tweener that can probably play either role. Long, tall, he can jam pretty well. I don't like what the clip that they show right off the bat is his half-hearted blitz rep, but, it's going to be what it is. I'm going to pull him up. Matt, what's your initial reaction to that selection?
It's exactly what I mean. Like, it wasn't the player that I necessarily thought it would be, but definitely the position. I don't know a tremendous about him, so I'm not sure I can really speak to specifics yet. But this is it's the position that they had a need for. He certainly would profile as the type of guy who could come in and play some special teams. I'm sure that we're going to learning more about him. We're going to see he's got that attitude and that dog in him that the Chiefs are really looking for right now. But as far as the position goes, yeah, I mean, this was absolutely, I think the Chiefs were probably bound and determined to come out of the fourth round with the defensive back no matter what.
Well, I'm really happy with it. I know you're partial to McRobertson, Dan, but I want to show you guys, not to get cocky here, but this is L'Jarius Sneed on the draft guide from Rogue Analytics. And yes, you are seeing this correct. For the safety group, he is athlete number 1. And I think, again, this goes into the theme that we saw with Willie Gay, having to have that speed and that athletic ability on the back end of the defense in particular to go with what they have in Willie. He does take the ball away at a great clip. As far as that safety group, 3 in the hawk rate, that's a plus. I'd have to look at his raw numbers again to get that on the board. But I like what this means. We're going to see how he transitions because La Tech's not exactly walking into the NFL. But Dan, disappointed that it wasn't the corner type, or are you happy with long?
No, I like it. I think that they're really ideally, we're talking about 2 guys out of the same school who played really well together, interchangeable positions, and they ended up going for the guy that's longer, he's bigger, and I could actually see him, he's got those physical traits that Robertson does, and like I said, they play stylistically similarly, so it makes a lot of sense to take that, the athletic profile and the length and the speed and that kind of thing, and mold him into this defense, which is, what we've been talking about, you getting the length in there and be more physical up front with your defensive back. So I actually really like it. It was either, either one of them really would have been good with me. And I like Sneed a lot as a probably a safety / a corner hybrid.
Yeah, and I would say that's what stands out to me about him is that this fits with a tendency that the Chiefs like with their safeties is guys who can play corner who can cover. So the fact that he's got that experience and has some versatility certainly would fit in with what we've been talking about, that they do need a nickel guy, somebody that can be a little bit of a hybrid and move back and forth, drop back when needed, move up to the line when needed. He certainly would profile as the kind of guy that could do that. I mean, maybe a little bit more developmental prospect, but yeah, I mean, and like I said, I mean, he does look like the kind of guy that would profile as a good special teamers as well.
Yeah, I think he can do a little bit of everything. He's got great speed. He's one of the best deep threats in terms of guarding. I think it's a 4.37 is his raw number in the 40. And for a safety, one of the underrated things that I really like about his game, less than 50% completion rate when targeted. That's a significant thing. Again, those long arms come into it. I got to double check. I want to say that they
31.
were
31, almost 32.
I mean, and that's a threshold for some teams. I know the Chiefs have looked at that in the past, but in terms of like physical makeup, he's a little bit thinner. Came into the combine at 192. But when you look at comparing to like we talked about Diggs in the run up to the draft, the length is right about the same. You have the height that's very similar. I think that in terms of getting those things done and being a guy that can play all kinds of mixed coverage, I think that that's a pretty good fit here on day 3. Matt, do you think that that's enough in the backfield, or do you think that they have to continue to look at this secondary?
I think numbers wise, they would still like to have some guys back there. I mean, just as far as pure depth goes and options. You're going to hear again, from Brett Veach that you just can never have enough guys that cover. But as far as the 5th round pick goes, I think there's a lot of different directions. They've hit all their needs. For the by and large, they've hit corner, or rather defensive back. They've hit offensive line, they hit linebacker. I mean, corner is still the position. So, and that could be filled a couple of different ways. I mean, it could very well be that maybe there's some priority free agents out there that they like. Maybe they can pick up some bodies later. Chiefs are definitely not opposed to that. I mean, remember they've got a starting cornerback right now who was a free agent that they really like that they picked up from Dallas and Traverse Ward. So. Yep. You can find talent, and that's they're not afraid to mine deep for corners. So I think by the end of the day, when free agency starts, that we will see a cornerback or two on this roster. But I think that as far as meeting their needs, I think they're pretty wide open to be able to go best available player in the 5th round, which is whoever it is that they like the most.
Well, and I wonder, as we were talking about Robertson in particular, the height thing is a concern. I didn't like him because of that in terms of fit. But again, this is somebody that I think as a UDFA, he might be perfect. I don't know that he lasts that long. But if the rest of the league is worried about him, you might end up with Sneed and a teammate. I think that'd be a great fit, Dan. Do you think that's worth the value?
Well, Robertson was picked actually right after us by Oakland, so he's right off the board.
That's what I get for looking 17 directions at once.
That's fine. I saw that. I'm like, oh, they just went Louisiana Tech. The
very next pick, yes.
To Las Vegas. Okay, great. See, I said it right that time. Yep. Thanks for pointing that out, Dan. Okay, folks, so listen to Dan, not me. Quarterman goes. John Reed is another nickel corner that went very closely after that. I think that's interesting. I think he was underrated. I'm kind of, at this point, like Matt, you said, they've addressed most of, if not all of their issues in some form or fashion. The numbers right now at corner, I think, depending on how they're going to deploy Sneed, I'll be interested to see when you hear what's the schedule. Are we going to hear from Andy or Veach today? Or now?
We won't. The guys that we're going to hear from today will be the players that they've drafted and the area scouts that worked on them. So we should start here. I have probably the video chat with the scout that worked on Sneed probably here in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. So I'll be jumping off, but I will join you guys later.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll have another link there for the 5th round. But thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
You bet, guys.
All right. Going forward, I can't say I'm comfortable with the number of DBs. Like I want another one for my gut. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that something that they said yesterday about those free agents out there. I get the Eli Apple's not a great option. We're looking at guys like Logan Ryan and Prince Anukamura, who's actually played in Spag system before, are still free agents. And I think that now that, I've taken some time to kind of look at their draft, what we got out there in free agents, just with how this, this offseason is, it makes a little bit of sense to me to want to bring in a guy from, a free agent that maybe in Anukamura, who's played in a system before for Spags, to have the comfortableness with it and just be able to come in and play if need be. Because really, if we're looking at, they already have their starters locked in. They don't need another starter right away, but Anukamura could come in, he could play in this defense and be comfortable without having to learn the playbook like a rookie would. So I think that we're kind of seeing some of that reflected in the way that they've handled this draft. And I was a little upset last night, to be honest with you, but I've reflected on the Niang pick, and I really am starting to love that pick, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said last night, it's perfect spot. He was selected right where I had him graded, so I'm comfortable with that. And the bottom line comes down to if they're comfortable with his medical, that's the only thing that I had concerned about, because a labrum for an offensive lineman is significant. And folks, I just got a text. It looks like I'm not seeing any of your comments here in the stream. I know you guys are making them, so I'm going to try to flip over here. And Aaron Morrow, if you will hit me with the big ones, Dan and I will try to answer some of the questions here as we wrap up on round 4. But I like what you said about Niang. Again, the fit, it's a little bit delayed, but tied in with what Veach said about the free agents in the secondary. I think that all goes back to how they've approached this entire offseason in trying to bring their guys back, bring professionals back, and not concentrate on rookies that you have to rely on.
Exactly.
Because of the shortened season.
Yeah, that's the biggest reason that I've come around on Niang a lot. And I think that I've seen a lot of people say, even Brett Veach, that he could come in and compete at guard right away. And I think that might be a little bit of more of what you want other than what you need. I think Niang is going to be a really good tackle in this league, and I don't necessarily want him playing in 2020 for a season that might not necessarily need him at. They do have a lot of bodies, and if we're talking about Rankin, whose injury prevents him from coming back and contributing at guard, they've got. I believe that they're going to have LDT play at right guard, even though he wasn't that great last year. I think that his restructure signifies that they want to at least give him that opportunity. So they're really looking at, and if they love Ryder as much as they do, then we're talking about just the left guard spot that is open at this time, and that would leave Rankin, Wiley, and Allegretti vying for that spot. If you're talking about Niang coming and playing guard, we're talking about 4 guys for 1 spot almost. So I think that it would be kind of more ideal to let him soak up that information with Fisher and Schwartz and kind of have a redshirt a rookie season to learn the nuances of the offense and become a tackle that maybe we end up letting an Eric Fisher go after the 2020 year. Not saying that that's what I want, but it's just more of a projection kind of thing.
Yeah, and I see where you're coming from. I agree with you that the LDT restructure tells me that they feel like he's still on the way up. I have a tendency to think that too. A lot of linemen in particular aren't back to the full strength until like year 2 after a big surgical procedure. So they give him another chance there. But I don't think that Niang can really go over to the left very well. Yeah. Everything that I see about him, the athlete that he is, he's played on the right. And the athleticism helps, but I don't think you want to throw the rookie in there and make him compete backwards. We saw what it did for Wiley. It took him a while before he was able to do that. And Wiley is also a good athlete, folks. That is significant. So I agree with you. I think they just line him up in the best 5 play wherever it happens to be, and maybe they just groom him as the swing tackle. Yeah. Maybe he only plays if one of the tackles gets hurt. And I don't know, and this is not to run down Eric Fisher, but I don't know how much Eric Fisher has in him. He missed 4 games last year. He has had some injuries over the years. I'm not talking about longevity. I'm just talking about next year. Maybe he plays 12 games. Maybe he doesn't. And that's significant as well. I want to get to a couple of questions because I had to pull up a second screen. Sorry about that, folks. Mike McCoy, you asked a good question. What team do you guys feel has done the best so far? Not the Chiefs. I think I know where I feel. What do you think?
It's got to be the Ravens. The Ravens have had an absolutely phenomenal draft, and I hate it. They've had such a good draft. They reloaded at linebacker. They've added a weapon for Lamar Jackson. They are a team that consistently drafts well, and it just continues to be undervalued in this NFL. But they just continue to reload. It's ridiculous.
And I have to say, DeCosta, kudos, because transitioning from Ozzie Newsome, you could really drop the ball there. That is not an easy thing to just replace a Hall of Fame GM, in my opinion, like that.
Seamless.
Yeah, exactly.
Seamless.
I will say this. Like we were talking about just a little bit ago, about how the Chiefs seem to be very cognizant of what the adaptation problems are going to be for rookies. The Baltimore Ravens don't care. No. They've had key players as rookies that I think they're going to have to count on. That might give them a hiccup or two, but man, there was a point last night where I was wishing the Chiefs and Ravens had switched their drafts.
Yeah, and see, I think that they're betting more on the end of the season, postseason for those rookies, and I totally understand that you're a team that's probably going to win your division. If you know, the only thing that I can think possibly happens is that Big Ben has a rejuvenation process, which is not going to happen. I don't. He's not the guy that can move in the pocket like he used to. He can't take those hits anymore, and I just don't see the Steelers being that good offensively to keep with the Ravens. So I think that the Ravens are almost a lock to win that division. So that's what their eyes are on right now, and just
Yeah.
kind of using the first half of the season like the Chiefs did last year with their defense, kind of figuring out what's going to work best and seeing what rookies are going to do here and there, and then just getting into the playoffs and then having them be at their peak and ready to go.
Yeah, I agree with you. A comment from Alex Humphreys, and I have to correct you, Alex. Veach, his comment is Veach is a P-Spark addict. No, it's not P-Spark. It's called the Athletic Matrix. It's the next evolution. This is where we're going, and you should check it out. The Chiefs do have all of my metrics. A number of folks in that organization, I doubt that they looked at it, but that's okay. There are teams that have taken a glance, and I think it's going to pick up steam because, like we've seen here, whether it's P-Spark or my metrics or whatever it is, athleticism is becoming more and more important. We've seen what the speed is in the AFC West. We've seen how athleticism is driving up draft boards across the league. I think the Ravens took that into account. Another team that I feel, I was looking at it last night, somebody that I was pretty impressed with was, for all the hubbub, I thought that Indianapolis, I think, has done another good job. I'm a little baffled with the Jacob Eason selection. I didn't see him. I saw more as a UDFA, but what do you think about the Colts?
They're interesting. Unless they think that Philip Rivers is going to play 2 more years, then they don't necessarily have a quarterback that's going to take them anywhere further with regards to Jacoby Brissett, who I think is a pretty decent quarterback, but he's probably already hit his ceiling. Maybe they're betting that Philip Rivers plays 2 years so they can sit Eason for a couple years and learn. That's the only thing that I can see with that pick, so that kind of confuses me a little, just a little bit. I would have thought they would have drafted Jalen Hurts, but then they bring in another running back. They have Marlon Mack. I guess just a little confusing, but I think that they've done some good things, not necessarily bad things. But the Colts, and then they got Michael Pittman Jr., your guy at 34. So they're
I think
trying.
he's a Rivers guy is what it is. Rivers likes those big targets.
I completely get that. He wants to throw the ball up even though it's going to sit there for 5 seconds. And,
right? And hope that your guy comes down with it. Yeah.
That's someone that's going to do that. So I understand. They think that they got a window here with Rivers, so they're going to try and help him out. And I get that. That's pretty smart for winning now.
Yeah. I have to say, I think I have the Colts is coming up in that division, maybe even ready to lead it, but they have a little bit of competition. I like so far what the Steelers have done actually with Claypool and then Alex Highsmith. I think is a really underrated outside linebacker. They can pair with TJ Watt and get some pressure. And then they came back today with double picks of Anthony McFarland and Kevin Dotson, Louisiana guard, who I think is an up-and-comer as well.
Yeah, the Steelers are just, again, they're trying to do what the Colts are doing with a late quarterback and win now, and I don't think either of them can do it. The Steelers desperately need a quarterback of the future. We saw last year Delvin Hodges and Mason Rudolph get benched at multiple times for each other. The future isn't there, but they apparently think that Roethlisberger has 2, maybe 3 years left in him. But that's what they're doing. They have a great young defense. Don't get me started. They've got Tevin Bush and Mika Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt. So they've got guys at every level that are impact all-star level players on that defense, and that they'll be hanging around in that division for a while with them.
Yeah, I agree. I can see them pushing. Just the Raiders have done. I was just trying to look for Raiders under Oakland. It doesn't scan that one anymore, folks. It's LV. I got to remember that stuff. Chargers with Herbert. We talked about them a little bit. Again, they continue to pick linebackers that I like.
Yeah,
Ken Murray going to them as well. But I have to say, the Ravens clearly are the standouts. I think Dallas got better.
Oh, Dallas got good.
Yeah, I mean, and you could see like the teams that feel that they're in striking distance, they're taking a very hard look at successful programs in the NCAAs.
Yep.
Double Oklahoma players for Dallas, double Clemson players for Pittsburgh. Like they're specific programs that even outside of the SEC, folks, that you have to pay specific attention to, because that's how the league works.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, CeeDee Lamb fell to the Dallas Cowboys for the rest of the NFL. I think that's a match made in heaven with Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper for that offense. And I mean, I didn't see CeeDee Lamb falling that far, and then here they are. The Cowboys are like, wait, he's just in our lap. We can take that guy, right? And then, oh yeah, so that offense is going to be good. And I think it's worth noting that the Green Bay Packers have yet to give Aaron Rodgers anything.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, to the point that it's almost comical at this point.
I think it's on purpose. I think they are doing it despite Aaron Rodgers, because maybe he irritated them, and now they're like, okay, well, we'll just go ahead and draft your replacement and then not give you anything to win now.
Well, and it's nothing against Josiah Deguara. I think he's a decent backup tight end. He's athletic. Yeah, exactly. He's not a weapon that's forcing anything this season. I think he will grow into something good, but it's going to take some time. But folks, let us know what you think. Hit those comments. I think Dan and I are going to take a break. I'm going to eat some lunch. We will be back for the 5th round. It will be another link, and I'll try to get the comments fixed so that we can actually talk a little bit more. Right now, that's the Chiefs' last pick of the day. I don't anticipate them garnering any other additional picks. So we'll meet you back here in an hour or so or whatever, and we'll talk about the 5th pick. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you jumping in.
Sounds good, man.
All right, folks.